Over a decade ago, a friend of mine brought his copy of Maze along on a car ride. Its haunting illustrations and disjointed narrative captivated me from a young age. First, I borrowed it. Then, I owned a copy that vanished. Then I forgot all about it. Then, out of nowhere, I remembered it and got my hands on yet another copy last year. Why do I keep coming back to this book? And why do I feel that I need a copy on my shelf? Because I can't help it. I'm still trapped in it. One of the earliest known iterations of interactive media was the I Ching, from around 10,000 to 750 BC. The I Ching was a manual that contained 64 hexagrams that supposedly spelled out divine knowledge. Based on the manipulation of yarrow stalks, one could find the corresponding numbers within the manual. Claromancy, divination by means of casting lots. In essence, fate, divorced from choice. The casting of lots leads to a random outcome. Fast forward to 1930, and we get the purported first game book in Doris Webster and Mary Alden Hopkins's Consider the Consequences. This story can be read from the viewpoint of 3 different characters and has a total of 43 endings. Though it was not the first medium to have alternate endings or possibilities, the Choose Your Own Adventure books brought the concept into the public consciousness. The Cave of Time, which was published in 1979 and written by Edward Packard, was the very first in the Choose Your Own Adventure series. The idea for the series grew from a bedtime story Packard was telling his daughters. I had a character named Pete, and I usually had him encountering all these different adventures on an isolated island, Packard said. But that night, I was running out of things for Pete to do, so I just asked what they would do. The girls, Carolyn and Andrea, took the story in opposite directions, and Packard gave each an ending. What really struck me was the natural enthusiasm they had for the idea, and I thought, could I write this down? Before we dive into Maze, we must go much further back. According to Greek legend, the Labyrinth was created by the brilliant architect and inventor Daedalus at the behest of King Minos in order to seal away the monstrous Minotaur. It was so confounding that even Daedalus, its builder, struggled to escape its long corridors and blind alleys. Now, at first glance, the distinction between a maze and a labyrinth may seem unremarkable. It's just semantics, right? No, there's more to it. But before we examine the distinction, let's meet our Daedalus. Christopher Manson is a children's book author and illustrator from Buffalo, New York. Manson graduated from the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. Printmaking was his area of specialization. Here's a quote from Manson, courtesy of intotheabyss.net. "What I'm really after is the perfect book. The kind where you just can't imagine the words without the pictures, or the pictures without the words. I'm constantly working toward it." Originally titled Labyrinth, the publishers advised Manson to change the name because of the release of a quirky little film, also called Labyrinth. Though the word maze is used on the cover and throughout the book, the characters in the story were always meant to be in a labyrinth, not a maze. This is why understanding the origins of the Greek labyrinth is important. The purpose of a maze is to be solved. A labyrinth, on the other hand, is a machination to keep something trapped within forever. Namely, you. Continuity of vision is an achievement that few creatives attain. It pleases me to no end that Manson both did the writing and the drawing. Sometimes, no matter how much effort you put into describing something to someone, there's no guarantee that they have the same image in their head as you have in yours. The drawings were what drew me to the book in the first place. Some of the drawings fill me with wonder, and others with dread. These images are meant to be savored, to be studied, and preferably experienced firsthand. Published in 1985, Maze gained popularity in the United States and in the UK upon release from Henry Holt & Company publishers. Henry Holt & Company were responsible for the name change and for a contest to challenge the readers. All you had to do was find the shortest possible route to room 45, then the shortest route back out. 16 total choices should do it. The riddle of the maze could be found in room 45, but the answer lay in bits and pieces along the shortest route. Simple, right? The publishers issued the challenge and offered a whopping $10,000 prize and set a deadline. Then, they waited. And they waited. The deadline approached, and much to Manson's surprise, nobody had come forward with the answer. Discouraged, but still hopeful, Henry Holt & Company extended the deadline and released clues to help the reader decipher the riddle in room 45, but still, no one could crack it. Eventually, the publishers split the $10,000 reward between the 10 people who'd come the closest. The first groups that had taken a trip through the maze were unsuccessful in solving it. The maze. I met them at the gate, though I usually wait inside. Preoccupied with their own thoughts, impatient like so many children, they didn't see who I really was. They never noticed my crown, my pain, the fire in my eyes. Like all the others, they think the maze was made for them. Actually, it is the other way around. They think that I am some poet who will lead them through the symbols and spaces of this underworld. They think I will teach them lessons. They should call me Cerberus. I am the lesson. The monstrous walls rise up and run away as far as the human eye can see, circling and dividing. Which half is the maze? Even I get lost. It changes, sometimes slowly, imperceptibly, sometimes suddenly. This house is not only made of stone and mortar, wood and paint. It is made of time and mystery, hope and fear. Construction never stops. I take some pride in my role as architect. They think I will guide them to the center. Perhaps I will. Though the identity of the guide is by all accounts an Easter egg, you can piece it together by reading his dialogue closely. If for any reason you want to try and uncover the identity of the guide on your own, Skip to the next chapter of this video now. Throughout the book, the reader is treated to text where the guide gives pieces of personal information about himself. Though one of my parents might be lowborn, the other was close to a king. I've always felt at home here. If you think of all the deceptions practiced in my family, particularly on my father. Weren't you ever irresponsible? I asked, thinking of my childhood and how wild I had been. I've always hated confinement. A stone chamber, which reminded me of my old neighbors. Of course, that was a long time ago now. But would you believe their descendants are still telling stories about me and my family to their children? Even if most of the stories are lies and exaggerations, it is immortality of a sort. The game usually goes as I plan it, despite the intentions of my visitors, or perhaps because of their intentions. I have come to think of all the inhabitants of this house as members of my little kingdom. People can be so arrogant. In a very real way, we are all of us animals, at least in part. In one of the illustrations in the book, there's a torn piece of parchment that reads, "Important notice. All those who are visiting this house must be aware. The individual representing himself as the is no other than the." If you still don't get it, don't worry. You're in good company. A friend of mine who knew the answer had to walk me through it. I initially came at this question from the wrong mindset. The character leading you through the maze is the Minotaur. When I was doing my research into Greek myths and collecting theories on the identity of the guide, I forgot that Christopher Manson wrote books for children. I think this is important. I tried to use my rigid adult brain to solve the mystery of the guide when really, I could have used the flexible and imaginative perspective of my younger self. I discounted the Minotaur as a possibility because of my preconceived notions about who and what the Minotaur was. Christopher Manson's book, in its own whimsical way, explores possibilities like, what if the story of Theseus and the Minotaur was all wrong? What if Theseus never killed the Minotaur? What if the Minotaur didn't want to escape, but instead wanted to create his own kingdom? The Minotaur was the result of the union between King Minos' wife, Queen Pasiphae, and a white bull sent by Neptune to confirm Minos' right to rule. When Minos refused to sacrifice it, Neptune cursed Pasiphae to fall in love with the bull. She had Daedalus build a wooden cow that she hid inside in order to trick the bull to mate with it. Though one of my parents might be lowborn, the other was close to a king. I've always felt at home here. If you think of all the deceptions practiced in my family, particularly on my father. I love the fact that this story about the Minotaur and his maze-like abode is simply hidden in the background of the book. Then again, he said it right in the prologue. I met them at the gate, though I usually wait inside. They didn't see who I really was. They never noticed my crown, my pain, the fire in my eyes. Like all the others, they think the maze was made for them. Actually, it is the other way around. Daedalus had built the maze to confuse and trap the Minotaur, but now the Minotaur was going to build a maze and use it to confuse and trap others. It's not difficult to see the allure in a choose-your-own adventure. The inclusion of choice and its impact on the unfolding of the story was a truly revolutionary idea. How do you invest the reader in what's going on? Well, force them to make a decision. whether a failure or a triumph, it was a choice that the reader made. When an author creates a choose-your-own-adventure type story, they offer their audience a chance to join them in their storytelling. It's a grand invitation to engage with the written word in a whole new way. The closer you read and the more information you retain, the more likely you are to experience the desired outcome. The prize for the reader doesn't come at the end when they close the book. Instead, each choice they make is a gateway to new paths and unforeseen rewards that follow. I can't say with any degree of certainty that Christopher Manson was directly inspired by Consider the Consequences or Choose Your Own Adventure books, but I can say that all these authors saw potential in choice. Even though this book was published in 1985, people online are still discovering new things about it to this day. The website I mentioned earlier, intotheabyss.net, is home to an enthusiastic community dedicated to unraveling the complex puzzles on each page, many of which are still unsolved. Christopher Manson said that he wanted to create the perfect book, one where written words are just as integral to the enjoyment of the reader as the illustrations. I don't have the authority to say that Maze is a perfect book, but the fact that there are still people reading it and getting stumped by it to this day has to count for something. By letting the reader carve their own path, make their own mistakes, and learn from them, Manson created an engaging and challenging work of art that has stood the test of time. I can't recommend this book enough, and if you don't have your own copy of Maze, I highly recommend you go out and buy yourself a copy. Even if you're not much into puzzles or mysteries, if nothing else, to read the story and look at the gorgeous illustrations, that is reward enough. As of the uploading of this video, I have found the shortest path in and out of the maze. I haven't figured out what the riddle in room 45 is, and I haven't found the answer along the shortest path. I don't know how long it will take me to find the riddle and the answer of the maze. It's possible I never will, and that's okay. I'd rather be stuck inside this book forever, rather than escape using stolen information. That guilt and regret would become for me a new labyrinth, but this time with no possible escape. Of all the books to be trapped in, Maze is a good one. Then again, if I ever get tempted to cheat, I'll just have to remember that it was I who decided to trust a maze with a red herring over the door. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.